Hello, everybody. My guest today is Patrick Woodard, who's a practicing hospital physician who wrote code to fix a problem no one else would. And now he's the CIO of Monmouth Health, running the busiest ER in the five-state stretch of South Dakota and Wyoming. He's here to talk about doing more with what we already have. Hey, Patrick, welcome to the Digital Exchange.
Thanks, Wayne. It's great to be here, and thanks for that great introduction.
Oh, thank you. And like I said, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'm glad you're on board. So, Patrick, I want to jump in and talk. You and I had a conversation, and I think the audience would love to hear. I know you wrote an app as a resident to fix a vengeful bad outcome, and you actually started a company through that. Can you talk to me of how you made progression from a physician all the way up to the CIO and how that building your company take you to that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, a lot of things happen in hospitals all the time, especially, back when everything was on paper. And some of those are preventable and some of those are maybe not as preventable. But for all of the ones that are preventable, our obligation as health system leaders, as physicians, is to try and remove as much danger out of healthcare as is possible. When I was in training, which was at Howard University in Washington, D.C., one of those bad outcomes happened that was because of a patient that transferred between. At the time we were on paper, it was a patient who had been admitted to a cardiac team, but it turned out they actually needed medical care. And because the overnight resident had gone home, there wasn't a good sign out between the cardiology team transferring the patient and the receiving team. Because of that, the patient had something that was ultimately preventable. And I had been one of those kind of nerdy kids growing up. I think when I was a kid, we call them script kiddies, kind of a hackery type. And I hadn't, I'd reformed myself. I'd gone to medical school, so I was no longer in the hacking world. But what I did still have was some technical chops. And I thought, this, we had a mechanism that would prevent patients from disappearing into the system. We would be able to prevent this from ever happening again. I dusted off my coding skills, wrote a web app at the time that was, this was at the time when cloud was like not really something people were doing. Everybody wanted it on-prem. But for me, on a resident salary, I was able to spin up servers in AWS and do it for really cheap, kind of proof of concept, demonstrate that you could make it work. Ended up taking that concept to our chief medical officer, who immediately saw the potential patient benefits of that tool, and so made that really a requirement for our physicians, our staff physicians in the hospital to use. And I'm happy to say that we didn't have that same problem ever happen again once we put our software that I wrote into the system. What was new for me at the time was he asked me how much was I charging to charge the hospital to use the software. And I hadn't really thought about that as an answer because I was just focused on solving the problem and seeing if people would adopt the tool. So I kind of made up a number, which at the time for me seemed like a lot of money. Now on the CIO side of things, signing contracts, I definitely undersold myself in terms of what I should have been charging, but that's all right. You live and you learn. That company, DocDocs, ended up becoming kind of a light EMR for skilled nursing and hospitalist teams across the country that would use it in multiple facilities. And so when I had an opportunity to kind of sell off parts of that company in 2016, I was able to do that. But what I learned and loved from that experience was, first of all, running a startup, you get to figure out things that you never thought you would need to figure out. Like, you became a marketing director, you became your back end, you became your front end. I mean, you really got to learn a lot about running a company. I had to learn some finances. I had to learn sales. I had to figure out what health system IT departments look like and all of that. And from what I appreciated from the experience was the ability to impact patient care in a positive way for patients really from on both coasts, to be able to say, like, yes, as a physician, I can go into one room at a time and care for one patient at a time. And in the course of a day, that might be 20 or 30 people. But through technology, I am able to positively impact care for thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of patients. And so that's what I really appreciate about what I'm able to do in my current role as the chief information officer. The physician part of me never goes away. It informs everything that we do here in terms of what at Monument Health we're able to do with our all of the technology that supports our physicians, our caregivers, our patients across a large catchment area. So um, from the startup world, I was able to move into the IT administration on the health system side of things, and I've had a really great time doing that.
Well, you said something that I think was very, since you had that entrepreneurial bug and you went out and was running a company, you were forced to be in a different seats. And I think that's a value added to you as CIO because now you can actually relate to the other CFOs, CIOs, CFOs, and be able to translate because you were in those positions the different lenses that each one of them have because we all have the same issues. The problem is when we're translating to the different teams, we're not talking in the language they like. So, do you see that being an advantage for you now as a CIO, being able to understand, relate with the CFO, and be able to communicate with them better?
Totally. And really, what it comes down to is the CIO role is in many ways a translational role. You have to, nobody really cares about what your server architecture is.
Right.
They care about what does this enable? Or when you're speaking with a CFO, why do I have to spend $4 million on new servers? Well, you have to be able to tell the story to a CFO. Well, if you spend this now, you're going to see the returns and tell an ROI, a financial ROI story. Well, the physicians don't necessarily care about the financial ROI. So what does it mean for them as a caregiver? Well, you'll be able to do X, Y, Z a little bit faster, those types of things. So, I mean, your role as a CIO is to be able to kind of tell that story in a way that is impactful to the listener in the language that they are accustomed to speaking. I think that's why it's also helpful for me to be a physician working in a health system is although, I not see patients as a CIO, but being able to tell a story of why are we making these changes? Why are we making these investments? Why are we putting in these new technologies? Because it has this positive patient impact, because it allows you to have more time in your day, those types of things. It a little bit of credibility that you are able to be given just by the nature of able to talk credibly in a language.
Well, that actually leading to a question I was thinking in my head as you were speaking is I know you mentioned with Monument Health, the CEO wanted a physician in the CIO seat. A lot of people say, well, that's not technical. Why do you think he needed somebody that had a physician's background in that CIO seat, that a technical person that has history as being a physician in that seat? What's the value that brought to Monmouth Health, and why was the CEO look for that?
Well, I can't read her mind, but I do. What I will say is, this before me was also a physician, and I think she
Uh-huh.
did a really wonderful job of helping the organization get to where it was when I was able to pick up from her. So that was nice. We're, as you mentioned, our catchment area is quite wide. Our main hospital is in Rapid City, South Dakota,
Mhm.
and we're the busiest in 5 states, which is crazy. We have Black Hills here. We're a major tourist center. Mount Rushmore's here. The Sturgis Motorcycle Rally is here every summer. Actually, it's coming up next week. So we're already seeing the influx there. But if you think that if you miss the Rapid City Hospital ER, the next trauma ER is 350 miles in any direction. You have to go to Denver, or you have to go to Omaha or Sioux Falls, or you have to go into Montana, or all the way to Fargo, North Dakota. So, I mean, you're talking about vast distances where there is not a lot going on, and we're the only real health system in the area, which is rewarding for me as a member of the community and a potential patient here. It's nice to know that we do a good job, but it's also important for us to recognize that because we're the only ones here, we do have an obligation to deliver high quality care. And in my opinion, the reason that it's helpful to have a physician CIO here in particular and other places, although I think more places should consider it, is really the ability to tell a quality story, a patient care story in terms of everything that we do. I mean, so much in technology is a black box. People don't understand it. People's experience with technology is mostly their consumer grade devices. They buy a MacBook off the shelf, they pick it up, it works right out the box. They get a router from their cable company, a modem from their cable company that's also a router. They go home, they plug it in, it just works. Enterprise technology, as you know, is a little more complex than that, but they don't need to necessarily know the whole story of every single piece that goes into delivering lights on every single day. But what they do need to know is that I believe that the patient outcome is what really matters. And so from that perspective, it is important, I think, to be able to at least understand some of the technical components that go into consistently having your tools work when you come into the office every day. But ultimately, and I think this goes back to being able to speak in multiple languages, the CIO role is a storytelling role, and one about what is this that really matters every day. Because ultimately, you have to convince people to make an investment in something that they probably don't really understand. So you really have to be able to tell a story in a way that means something to them. And for us, patient care is paramount. It's what we're here for. And if I can tell the story in terms of how does this help us deliver better, high quality and lower cost patient care, then that is ultimately what it's really about.
And I think you're in a phenomenal position. I love the fact they're looking for somebody that has some type of position, because I think it's the advantage. You not only understand the business units, which is the different departments, because you had to kind of be in those seats before, but you also understand the business component of it. With a physician's background, you understand the business goals and objectives, and that's also missed. And I love the fact you said you're storytelling, because that's actually what a CIO does. It has to now be able to translate between these different people why these things are valuable and why you should go in certain directions, strategic directions, because technology is a leverage they can use. I love what you said earlier about a physician can see one patient, but technology can touch a million. And that's phenomenal. But now being able to translate and get everybody from different business units to agree on something, because something that Freeze and I love to hear if you agree with this. A lot of time things that I found on my side that freezes an initiative is a room of people that says yes, but when they leave, they're saying yes to different things. Okay.
Definitely, definitely. Their understanding of it may differ. Yeah.
And being that CIO, you have to now translate. So when everybody nods and say yes, they're saying yes to the same thing, even though you've translated in their language. Do you understand? And I love what you said about that. You know, so let me talk. Can you tell me more about how have you improved patient care? Let's back up a little. I'm coming to our past conversation, how we talked about improving. Your belief, and tell me if I'm correct with this, is you don't always have to buy more tools or add more to your stack. People are missing out on optimizing what they do have. And you and I went through analogy. You can throw a rock at anybody. I don't care who they are. And said they use something as simple as Microsoft Word. I guarantee you there's not too many people. There might be the 0.001%, but the majority of the average person, even a technician, there's tons of buttons that nobody ever knows what that button does. And they've been using it for years. We don't utilize the stack we do have before we decide to buy something else. And if I'm correct, you believe in optimizing what you have before you start looking externally for any new solutions. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, I would take something even as simple as Microsoft Excel. If you are in a conference room with a bunch of leaders, business leaders, and you pull up Excel and you put a pivot in there, half of them their minds are going to be blown. And maybe that's not true in finance or some more like Excel heavy industries, but simple things that are, probably to you and me, table stakes. But I think you're spot on with just the tools that everybody uses, has day to day. Like how many power users of those tools exist? I mean, even your own cell phone, which you probably changed the background and you might have moved a few of your applications around on your phone, but you probably haven't gone into all your settings and adjusted your notifications and done fairly simple things, much less figure out how to maximize your security and all of the things that are possible, or create automation that when you get home, your garage doors and your lights turn on or whatever. Some people, that's far too techy for them to even consider. And yet those are capabilities that exist without you really needing to buy them anymore. That's true on the enterprise side as well. As a health system, our primary platforms are our electronic health record, our enterprise resource planning tool. We have a couple of IT back office type things, I'm in those kind of things. And out of record, how many of our users? So I think a good example is our health record there has a search function. It's right at the top. Many applications have them. Most users are familiar with using a search feature. They go to their browser and they type in their URL bar, which is no longer a URL bar anymore. It's kind of a search. It's just a search bar. It looks like a URL bar, and they're very accustomed to doing that. And yet, when we look at our utilization of the search bar in our electronic health record, it's somewhere around 10%, meaning that there are 90% of users who either don't know that it's there or haven't figured out how to make it valuable. And yet it's one of the most powerful tools that exists, because you're looking for a patient's white blood cell count. You don't have to click anything. You can just type it there. And yet it's not well used. Why? Is it training? Is it unwillingness to take time out of your day to learn something new? Is it you just need to be reminded a few more times? Or is it not valuable? And being able to suss those out, I think, is important, but also being able to help our users to be able to find these types of benefits that already exist is part of our prerogative as health system leaders to help drive that, because so many leaders will go to a conference and find some that's promising that they can save extra money or time spent, add new functionality. And 90% of the time, that's already something that's possible here. We just either haven't focused on it, or we haven't done an adoption drive to make sure that people are using it, or maybe there's some configuration or tweaks that we need to make. And, from that perspective, if we took the same amount of energy that people had in implementing new tools and instead focused on really driving adoption of their existing tools, I truly believe that there's probably about a 20 or 30% uplift, either in efficiency or revenue or reduced expenditure, that you can find in any given, at least health system, but I think in probably most businesses, just because it's I mean, your internal tools don't have good sales teams. The team left long after long ago, right after the contract was signed. So how do we become the sales team for tools that we already had, in terms of just driving adoption and helping people find their utility that exists here, but they maybe haven't focused on?
Let me ask you, because let's start from the top. What's the biggest gap between what leadership thinks they're getting from a tool compared to what people are actually using? Because I normally find that either leadership is either overly optimistic, overly pessimistic, and that's why they start bouncing around. How gauge your leadership of truly understanding what the people are using and aligning them to what's actually happening? What's your approach? How do you guys deal with that?
I think it's always a bit of a challenge. And to me, not usually truly in system capabilities. Sure, yeah, sometimes you'll get something that's vaporware or that's just slideware that doesn't really exist, or it doesn't work as advertised. I think we all have our own examples of that from our own experience. But the vast majority of it is an adoption thing. And I was actually just joking this the other day with a colleague. When do people congratulate you on your go live? It's the day of go live. But that's not the most important day of go live. It's usually day 2 is when all the bugs come out, and day 14 is when you have people starting to get tired of you talking about it anymore. And most
They
people,
should congratulate you when you see the metrics on it.
like 30 days or 90 days later, there shouldn't be any celebration on go live day. The celebration should be like 90 days later, like, so that you keep the attention span. But we're so focused on getting across what we think is the finish line, but that was just the first lap. There's still more to go. And it's partly, I think, people come to work to do a good job every day. And I don't know that a lot of people feel particularly like to feel. I mean, nobody likes to feel particularly uncomfortable, but learning something new really kind of points out like the your limits, and I think that makes people feel uncomfortable. So as soon as you can kind of get good enough that nobody's looking over your shoulder anymore, I feel like people are like happy with that. We need to encourage people to be more comfortable with feeling uncomfortable about not knowing something. When the learning happens, and that's when growth happens. And so if we can really encourage folks, whether, let's say it's a new module in your electronic health record, or maybe it's a workflow, it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not be great at something, especially if it's your first time. Like it would be crazy if you were good at it right out the gate. So really driving adoption and focusing on training is where you need to get to, and making sure that your trainers are able to speak in the language that the business expects and to be able to truly understand what is it you're trying to do. So I think I don't think it's a solved problem. I think it's one that it will continue to need to focus on forever. We're really focused in this current fiscal year on improving what we're doing on the patient access side out of our electronic health record. We're not really buying anything new there either. There are a couple new things, but mostly it's reconfiguring the health record and enabling technologies and adjusting workflow, frankly, to make these things possible. But that will be, 5% of how we use the tool. So if if it takes a year for us to really optimize the tool, we're not going to run out of work anytime soon. So I think good job security.
And you hit on some very key things that I've seen and struggle with is the honesty of it and getting people with really saying, hey, there's the gap. Because the problem you have is it's almost like school. You have a college classroom. Everybody in the classroom says, you know what, I got it. But testing day comes and 80% of them fail because nobody wants to admit, I really don't understand because they don't want to look
Yeah.
foolish and they don't want to also get extra work. It's very difficult to find that balancing act, and especially when you're working in a company. I personally find tons of surveys nice, but in long-term reality, people are not honest because nobody really wants to admit their gaps.
Well, right. I mean, you're it's your livelihood. You feel like you're being graded on performance. In reality, we should be so happy when employees come to us and ask for help, because
Yes,
that we should celebrate that, because it tells you that they're trying to improve. And that's all we really should be here for, is to do a little bit better than the day before. 1% better tomorrow, 1% better the day after that. That's growth. And if you're asking for help, then obviously you're interested in growing. So we all need to do a better job. And especially at scale, we're a company of around 6,300 employees. How do we really institutionalize that? We're on a journey to a high reliability. We want to deliver high quality. Every single patient that walks through that door needs to get high quality care. We know that. So in being able to have that high reliability is important to us. Part of that, to your point, Wayne, is the ability to say, great, you don't know, let's learn.
here's a horrible trend that I see happening. And I've been on Reddit and I watch a few people complaining about companies. AI is a big catalyst for it. A lot of people are tracking employee performance based on activity. Activity doesn't necessarily mean productivity.
It doesn't mean anything.
And that's becoming something that's a horrible trend that I've seen.
I would agree. Like, I very much think we should focus on what are the outcomes than
Yes.
rather than the mechanism.
Yes.
If
Yes.
you are good at your job that you can get done in 2 hours that normally takes someone 20, I don't really care what you do with the other 18 hours. You know, can you pick up something else? Maybe you should. Sure, great. But ultimately, it's the outcomes that matter. I mean, if do you care as a patient if your surgeon takes 30 minutes to do a procedure or 4 hours? You might care a little bit. There are some advantages to having procedures not take a super long time, but you really care that you get off the table and you go home and your pain is low and your problem is solved, right? Like that's what you care about.
Yeah.
Now, there's some other things that go into that maybe the health system cares about, efficiency or what have you, but ultimately patient cares about the outcome. When we send out a bill and it's wrong, that's not what we're looking for. So how do we make sure that that's consistently right every time? I don't care the mechanism by which you get it right every time, but we do want to get it right every time. I completely agree with you. Like tracking productivity or efficiency by an upstream metric of how much are you using something doesn't tell me anything about the quality of the product that you put out.
Exactly. Exactly. Some of the best companies that run do not track employees' hours. They actually track what's delivered, the goals. Did you hit the goals and objective of what they're trying to get accomplished? And I spot on agree with you. If it takes you 20 minutes to do something that's slated for an hour, then you know what? You have an extra 40 minutes. Do whatever you want.
We're today actually we're off our we're just going to do a quarterly, we're calling it a net partnership score, and so we're asking leaders all across our system just one question: is how well did Monument Health IT partner with you to help solve your goals? And that's all. Like ultimately we do, yes, we care about, you know, our SLA performance and how many have we closed and all those kind of things, but ultimately how well are we partnering with the business to help the business deliver patient care? That's what we really care about. And so that's why we're asking the question, and hopefully we get a good answer. But you know, either way, even if it's not a great score, we know what we will know that we need to improve upon it. And that's where we really need to focus: is how can we continue to be better every day? Because I'm a patient in this community, and there's a whole, you know, hundreds of thousands of people who rely on us for their health. So that's what really matters.
Let me ask you a good question here. Let me think of something. What's the thing that quietly keeps you up at night? Could be anything across the corporation when you're doing your job and your role. What's the thing to think about the most and will keep you up most at night?
For me, it's a leadership question for a future version of me about 3 years from now,
Mhm.
um, which is to say, there will be many areas in the system and in life where we choose to enable or choose not to enable an AI version of that. And sometimes it might be cheaper to use AI or faster, but ultimately we have to weigh, again, this goes to output, I guess, the quality of what we're doing. If it's cheaper to have an AI solution answer the phone, but it's wrong 10% of the time, how do we make sure that we're continuing to choose the quality option instead of looking at the bottom line every time? Because ultimately we're in a patient care business. I don't want to go to the doctor that's wrong 40% of the time. I want to go, even if they're cheaper.
I
And
think
that's what
that I think that goes back to what you said earlier. If you keep your eye open, and this is what I know in my position a lot when I deal with, I have to I forget things and I have to come back to what my roots are. What is the outcome you're trying to achieve? It's patient care and it's certain amount of customer care that you expect. AI is not there to replace, it's where it is there to augment. Adding it, does that hit I can achieve? And I think if you keep that lens, because you mentioned, hey, I got an automated system, and just I personally these healthcare practices with automated systems, I think that's poor.
yeah, you want to strangle somebody, but there's nobody to strangle because it's a robot.
Is
But
that good? Is that the outcome they're trying to get? If they really assessed what they're trying to achieve, if somebody's in distress, the last thing you want to do is hit buttons on automated system.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
I completely agree. And I mean, there are ways to do that are better, and there are ways to do it that are worse. And the thing, I guess, to answer your question, the thing that I worry is because of external pressures, whether that be or otherwise, are we going to inadvertently make decisions that worsen the quality of the product that we're supposed to deliver, which is a healthy person? And I think our obligation as health system leaders, as for me as a physician, is, you know, part of the Hippocratic Oath is first do no harm, which is to say, in this particular case, how do we make sure that we're not lowering quality in the search for something else that is an external pressure?
And here's what I found: we have goals, and those goals help with finance. So goals is first, finance will come. When you switch it and have finance drive the goals, you end up losing the finance.
Yes, totally.
It's almost like you're shooting yourself in the foot when you instead of focusing on what is the value that people are buying, why they will give you that money. that's forgotten a lot. And if we keep that focus, AI or anything else can be implemented in the right way where it's effective because we're not focusing on the tool, we're focusing on what we're trying to achieve. What is the value that people are coming to us for? And let me maintain that. And the the outcomes we want will follow us if we focus on that.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's well said. I mean, part of why I like working at Monument is because we're a mission driven organization. We're really embedded in the community. It's clear what we're here for. And it does make that decision making a little bit easier, which is not just we don't ever have financial pressures. Those certainly exist. But at least, it's part of our core values that does help us at least say consistently, we're to deliver high quality care every time.
And I, with you at the helm, I guarantee that's going to happen. But Patrick, I'm going to shift gears a little bit because I don't want this just to be about business. I want people to know a little bit about you, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Tell me about you being a violinist, okay? Because that blew my mind when you told me that. Tell me a little bit about that. Tell me about you.
Yeah, so I've been playing since I was 5. Both my parents were musicians, so I don't think I really had much of a choice in the matter. I think I was given the choice between piano and violin, not whether I wanted to, but which of those two I do. I chose violin. I'm very glad I did. It's a lot easier to transport a violin than a piano. Um, I thought that was going to be what I was doing for my career, and I actually went to school at the Peabody Institute in Baltimore to do that for my first year of college. I, you know, Something that you've done throughout your childhood as a hobby, now switching that into what you're going to do full time as your career leads you to question whether or not you like doing that sometimes or you want to do that exclusively. And going to Peabody gave me the opportunity to ask myself that question. It was, a little traumatic at the time because I had, planned my whole life around this idea. And so changing that idea midstream was a little bit of a quarter life crisis. But it's to me, it's now something that I get to do as a complete reset from my day to day. I do still play professionally with the Reno Phil. My parents live in Reno, and so it's a nice opportunity for me to see them and to see a whole cast of characters in a completely different part of my life. Playing music with people it's an artistic endeavor. It's one that is requires your full attention. And so it's an opportunity for me to step away from what is normally kind of a, long, stressful day and to do something that is not easy necessarily, but it's something that's completely different and rewarding in a completely different way than you'd be able to find. So it's something that I'm very lucky to be able to do and to be able to do with talented other individuals, and it's really is part of my life that I to keep.
Let me ask you, do you have a good background in mathematics or physics?
I did quite well on those parts of my exams. Yeah,
Yeah, because they say there's a correlation between music and physics and mathematics. The mindset that you have for musical notes, harmony, because those waves. I'm into physics. I'm a fan of it. I won't say I'm the best mathematician, but I have an engineering degree. I kind of dabble
you
in
kind
those.
of
Yes, and no,
yeah. I think
I suck as a musician. I'm not the best, but yes, I was. That's why I was curious.
I know a fair number of professionals who reached a pretty decent level of playing. And I think there's something in music that I don't know exactly what it is that helps you be successful in other areas.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't have kids, but anybody who does have kids, don't let them quit. Everybody I've ever talked to who quit, they played as a kid and then quit, and then now as an adult, I've never heard one. I've never heard anyone say, "Man, I'm glad I don't play piano anymore." It's always, "I wish I still played." So if you have kids and they're playing, don't let them quit. I'm glad my mom had a technique, which is probably a little manipulative, but okay, I was only like 6 or 7, so I didn't know. Which was I would get frustrated when something was hard and I quit playing violin. And she would
Uh-huh.
always tell me that she was paid up through the month. And so I had to keep going. Now I don't know if that was true. I don't think it was ever true, but but I couldn't quit because we'd already so by the time the end of the month was over, I was not frustrated. I had figured out what my frustration was or whatever. So it was, I don't know, it was a little bit of parental trickery that worked on some.
But it worked, and you should thank them now.
Yeah, I have.
Parental manipulation. I love it. See, that's old school.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Mom.
But Patrick, it was wonderful having you here. I really appreciate you jumping on with me. Is there anything that you want to share your contact with anybody or anything you want to promote? You're more than willing to do it now, and I could put it up in the end of the podcast so people can have it, be able to share.
Yeah. I mean, anybody who's looking for mentorship on especially from the non-traditional side of things, coming into health system leadership, IT leadership in particular, from outside of a technical role, there are a lot of nuance to it, but I think you're quite successful, and I'm always happy to help with the next generation. So happy for anybody who wants to reach out.
Oh, phenomenal. Do you want me to throw your email up on the end of this? So
Yeah, that'd be great. Happy to do that.
phenomenal. Patrick, thank you very much. I really been on the digital exchange.
Thanks, Wayne. Great to have a nice conversation.
Take care.